I poured the coffee into the expensive ceramic mug. My hand didn't shake, but the heat crawled up my arm like a reminder. I was standing here inside a boardroom worth tens of thousands of dollars, dressed in a custom-tailored suit, just to serve coffee. Just think of her as decoration. My husband's laugh cut through the tension like a blade. Eliana always knows how to make a conference room feel warmer. I turned just in time to catch the uncomfortable glance from Chris Donahue, our company's most promising client in 3 years. The man had flown in from San Diego to hear me present our strategy, not to watch me pour drinks like an office assistant. I had spent nearly 2 weeks analyzing regional consumer behavior, building out sample campaigns, even mocking up a new logo. But within 3 minutes of the meeting, I'd been interrupted by the same man who once called me the smartest co-founder he'd ever met. 3 years ago, Nathan and I met at a marketing conference in New Orleans. I was speaking on sustainable brand building in a competitive market. He was a fresh face just leaving a major agency to go solo. He listened through my whole talk, then struck up a conversation during the evening mixer. "Your take on emotionally driven consumer behavior is groundbreaking," he'd said, eyes lighting up like a kid who just discovered a new game. "I'm struggling with a retention campaign for Harper & Co. Would you be open to consulting?" What started as a collaboration became a partnership, then a relationship, and within a year we launched Mason & Vale, a marketing firm built on the exact creative model we both dreamed of. For the first 2 years we were the kind of power couple people envied. I handled market analysis and strategy. Nathan closed deals and charmed clients. We completed each other, in business and in life. When he proposed in my mom's backyard in Austin, I cried, because I truly believed he saw and valued me more than anyone ever had. I didn't notice the little shifts after the wedding. Maybe I didn't want to. At first it was meetings I wasn't invited to, just early stage stuff with the team. Then he suggested I move my desk from the executive office to the open area to be closer to the staff. When I asked why the Eden Stores deal, something I'd been chasing for 6 months, was signed under his name, Nathan shrugged. "We're a team, babe. Who signs doesn't matter." But I began to feel like I was being pushed out of the very foundation I had built with my mind and fire. One Monday morning, the nameplate Eliana Mason co-founder vanished from the boardroom door, replaced by Nathan Mason, CEO. I still remember how that felt, standing outside the room I used to run, now marked as someone else's domain. A few employees smiled awkwardly as they passed, but their eyes said what their mouths didn't. "This is above us." I quietly returned to my new workstation, a small corner by the window, just enough room for a laptop and a tiny cactus. And today, in the meeting with Chris Donahue, the same man who once emailed personally to request I lead his project, Nathan had called me a pretty face. I set the coffee pot down so gently no one heard it. But inside my head everything was shaking. It wasn't the public insult. I was used to interruptions. I was used to being called his wife instead of co-founder. But I wasn't used to being erased from a story I had written. A story I written, and that was the moment I knew I wouldn't let this go on another day. I first sensed something was off when Nathan suddenly suggested I stop worrying about the books. "I hired an outside accountant. Saves you the headache of managing all the little expenses," he said, folding a financial report, eyes avoiding mine. "Here's the thing. Nathan never gives up control, unless he has something to hide." That night, while Nathan was out meeting clients, I went into our home office. The file cabinet that used to be mine was now locked, but I knew where he kept the spare key, in the bottom drawer inside the old marker case. Carefully opening each drawer, I found a thick orange folder labeled Q1 Financials, internal use only. I flipped open the first page and felt my chest tighten. An $18,400 charge listed as video conference equipment, but our office hadn't installed anything new. Another expense, $5,200 a month over 3 months, went to a company named Archer Collaborative. I had never heard this name in any meeting. I took photos of everything with my phone, then carefully placed the documents back in order. That night I couldn't sleep. Every instinct in me screamed, Nathan was hiding something, and it wasn't just a few odd invoices. 2 weeks later I got my answer. in the most unexpected way. We were at a barbecue hosted by Nathan's close friends Drew and Alyssa, out at Lake Travis. I was plating fruit tarts in the kitchen when I heard Nathan's voice from the backyard, low but clear through the slightly open sliding glass door. Ileana has no clue about the Austin branch. I want to keep it that way until everything's finalized. Austin branch? I froze. My heart sank. Drew whispered, "Are you sure? She still owns 50%. On paper, Nathan chuckled, lowering his voice. But now she's just writing content. She signs whatever I give her. She doesn't read the fine print anymore. I stood there in someone else's kitchen, my fists clenched so tightly they turned white. That night, while Nathan slept, I logged into the company email. His password was the same one he'd used since college. His favorite baseball player's name and jersey number. Insultingly easy to guess. I searched the word Austin. Within 5 minutes, I found a string of emails between Nathan and someone named Wesley Grant, an attorney who specialized in business formation. Mason Strategies LLC, formation docs attached. Ownership, Nathan Mason, 100%. I read each line slowly, as if peeling back strips of skin. My name was nowhere to be found, but the planning documents clearly outlined the use of customer data from Mason and Vale, leveraging existing relationships, and reallocating streamlined staff from the former team for the new Austin headquarters. This time, I didn't just take screenshots. I backed up everything to a personal USB. I hid it beneath the lining of my handbag, the one I always carried with me. The next morning, I logged into our joint bank account. The balance was at least $30,000 lower than it had been 3 months ago. One by one, the transactions popped up like ice water to the face. Club membership fees, $7,800. Hotel bill from Lake Austin Spa Resort, $2,600. Cartier jewelry, $5,100. I had never received a gift from Cartier. It wasn't about the money, it was about the trust being trampled. The worst part? My own expenses from last month, groceries, utility bills, gas, were all paid with my personal card. Nathan had said, "We need to cut back for a while. You understand, right?" I canceled my yoga subscription. I stopped ordering my favorite lunch. Meanwhile, he was buying necklaces for someone else. The following week, I received a forwarded email from our accountant, Jonah, to HR. Attached was a document labeled Internal Ownership Restructure Proposal. The contents hit me like a freight train. Nathan would retain 70% of the shares. 20% would be split between 2 department heads. The remaining 10% was tentatively allocated to key staff members. Of me, my name didn't appear anywhere. I called Taylor the next morning, my voice steadier than I expected. "This has to stay confidential," I said quickly as she answered, "and it needs to be handled both as a friend and a lawyer." Taylor Moretti, my college roommate, was now a well-known corporate and divorce attorney in Austin. Direct, sharp, and impossible to manipulate. That's why I had no hesitation calling her at 7 a.m. "What's he doing, Elle?" Taylor asked, not needing further explanation. "He's trying to erase me from the company. Secretly formed his own business, used Mason and Vale client data and resources, and he's preparing a share redistribution without my signature." I heard her keyboard clacking on the other end. "Do you still have the company docs?" "I wrote them, Taylor," I said. "I remember there's a clause limiting share transfers without written consent from all founders. Send me everything you have, as soon as possible." We met at a quiet cafe near Lady Bird Lake. After reading through the emails, financial records, and documents I brought, Taylor looked up with an unwavering stare. "This isn't just misappropriation of shared assets," she said. "It's abuse of co-ownership authority, with clear signs of diverting value to a competing entity. If we present this to the board or in court, we can freeze his entire plan." From that day on, my schedule changed entirely. Lunch breaks were no longer about salads in the office kitchen. I sat in my car, opened my tablet, and relearned everything I once knew but had neglected. About shareholder rights, LLC structures, and fiduciary duties of a co-founder. Taylor sent me reading materials, online seminars, and draft agreements. I didn't read them like a betrayed wife. I read them like a deposed CEO preparing to reclaim her throne. Meanwhile, I started watching people more closely, especially Jessica. Jessica Reed had been with the marketing team less than 6 months. Quiet, punctual, stayed out of casual chatter. But something in the way she looked at Nathan reminded me of myself 3 years ago. A mix of disappointment and bitter realization. One afternoon, I ran into her in the elevator. "I know you're busy," Jessica said quickly as the doors closed. "But if you're doing something to push back against him, I want in." I turned to her, surprised not by the offer but by the firm voice behind her reserved demeanor. "What makes you think I'm doing anything?" I asked. Jessica shrugged. "Him cut my access to the CRM system 3 weeks ago. The 3 campaign ideas I submitted, he sent them to clients from his own email. I'm not stupid." I paused, then handed her a small note with my personal email and a list of internal documents. "If you can help me gather these, original contracts, executive meeting minutes, any amendments to company bylaws, this is where to send them." That night, in a folder disguised as printing service invoices, I received scanned copies of the original company bylaws. I opened them page by page, eyes wide like I was reading a will. Page 17, Section 5.2b, a line I had typed myself 4 years ago. Any transfer of ownership exceeding 15% of total outstanding shares must be accompanied by written consent from all founding members. I took screenshots, highlighted the clause, and sent it to Taylor with one note. "Here's the key." I signed the divorce papers at 7:10 a.m. on Monday. My hand didn't shake. Taylor placed another file in front of me, an official motion to restrict Nathan's financial control over the company until an investigation concluded. "You sure about this?" Taylor asked evenly. "Once we file, everything changes." I nodded without hesitation. He's already changed enough. We left the law office in silence. Taylor drove me to a cafe a few blocks from Mason and Vale's headquarters. I chose a table on the patio, where no one would notice me. My hand rested on the neatly tabbed folder. Emails, financial statements, the Austin Company's formation docs, and, most importantly, the company bylaws with Nathan's signature on page 17. I picked up my phone and texted Jessica. 9 o'clock today. It's time. Then I stood up and walked toward the building where I was once called co-founder. As I passed the front lobby, the receptionist looked briefly confused. I wasn't taking the service elevator like usual. "I have a board-level meeting," I said calmly, offering a faint smile. "I'll take the main elevator." The conference room on the 21st floor was already open. David Harris, Nathan's biggest prospective client, was speaking with board members Lucille Torres and Mark Brenner. All 3 turned as I walked in. "Ileana," David raised an eyebrow. "I didn't know you'd be attending today's meeting." I walked to the table and set the folder down. "I thought I should be here, as co-founder, shareholder, and ex-wife of Nathan Mason." The door opened. Nathan walked in wearing a dark gray suit, confidence radiating as always, until he saw me sitting in the chair to the left of the board leader's seat. His face shifted slightly. "Ileana, what are you doing here?" I looked up slowly. "Good question, Nathan, but I think everyone here needs to hear this first." I turned to the board members. "I have evidence that Nathan Mason, the current CEO, has violated company bylaws, misused corporate assets, and secretly established a competing company without the consent of the co-founder." All eyes turned toward me. I opened the folder and presented each piece. Emails with attorney Wesley Grant about forming Mason Strategies LLC. Bank transfers from company accounts to unauthorized expenditures. A share redistribution plan exceeding 15% with no signature from me. Lucille frowned, flipping through the pages quickly. "Wait, clause 5.2b. "I've marked it," I replied. Page 17. It clearly states, "Any transfer of shares over 15% requires written consent from all founding members." I never signed anything. David Harris leaned back in his chair. "Nathan, you never mentioned any of this in our negotiation meetings. I asked specifically whether all shareholders were in agreement." Nathan cut in, voice tense. "Liana is exaggerating everything. She's upset over personal matters, and now she's dragging business into it." Upset," I repeated, lightly placing my hand on the glass of water. "Sure, Because our joint account was drained on hotel stays and jewelry I never saw? Because my name was scrubbed from internal documents? And because you called me a pretty face in a boardroom where I wrote the strategic plan? I turned back to David, raising my glass slightly. Ex-wife, actually. Divorce finalized this morning. I keep the condo, the savings, and 50% of the company. Nathan's mouth fell open, a flush crept up his cheeks. You can't do this to me. David Harris interrupted. I think the real question is, how could you do this to her, Nathan? The room went silent. No one spoke up for him. Nathan took a step back, as if something he thought he owned had just slipped through his hands. The numbers, the clauses, the documents, everything said what I no longer had to. The meeting ended in a silence so heavy it felt like weight pressing on everyone's shoulders. Nathan left the boardroom first, pale and wordless, not looking at anyone. I didn't watch him go. I had more important things to do. Just an hour later, the official notice was emailed to all staff by the board of directors. Nathan Mason was suspended from all executive duties pending an internal investigation. Temporarily, i.e., Eliana Mason was appointed interim CEO. Nathan's building access card was deactivated that same afternoon. When he returned to the office, to collect a few personal items, it had already blocked all his system permissions. A security guard waited in the ground floor lobby, polite but firm. I'll sue, Nathan growled at the head of HR when denied access to the elevator. You're welcome to, she replied, gesturing, but as of now, you're no longer on payroll here. That day, I didn't leave the office until nightfall. When I stepped out of the elevator, the lobby was nearly empty, just a few soft yellow lights still on. And then, I saw something that made me pause. The nameplate Nathan Mason, CEO, was tilted sideways on the reception desk. Someone had taken it down but hadn't yet removed it. I bent down, picked it up and placed it in the drawer behind the front desk. Seeing it every day wasn't necessary. I knew exactly who was in charge now. 3 days later, the court issued a preliminary ruling upholding the co-founder's share protection clause. The secret share redistribution Nathan had attempted was entirely voided. Full control of the company was restored to me based on the original 50% ownership. No one mentioned the Austin branch again. No one brought up Mason Strategies LLC either. That company was shut down within 2 weeks of my formal complaint about unauthorized use of client data. Wesley Grant, Nathan's attorney, was also under investigation for improper business formation practices. And the Riverbend condo? I kept it. Nathan had bought it using our joint account, claiming it was an investment property. But in his financial filings he listed it as personal assets. My lawyer objected and the court ruled, joint assets must be split by mutual agreement. Nathan had no case. He moved in with his brother on the south side of Austin, in a small apartment barely 1/3 the size of the old one. I heard it from one of his former employees, someone who quit after discovering the whole truth. That first week back in the office as the new CEO, everything felt like it moved in slow motion. Some people avoided eye contact. They didn't glance away this time. Their looks lingered, with quiet acknowledgement. But one thing was crystal clear. I wasn't the shadow of someone else's success anymore. I held an executive meeting, listened to every department head, many of whom had once refused to speak without Nathan's approval. I ordered a full audit of all client accounts and a review of every internal expense. Every transaction from Nathan's tenure would be reevaluated. On the 10th day, I walked to the back parking lot, where there used to be a space marked with Nathan's license plate, painted with bold white letters, reserved, CEO. Now it was empty. I called the building manager. Can you have it repainted? I asked, pointing to the pavement. The new label should read, Reserved, Eliana Mason. Absolutely. I turned and walked toward my car, not flashy, not luxurious, but entirely mine. No one stood beside me saying, this is ours. No one tried to take credit. No one tried to erase me from the very journey I started. I no longer needed anyone to validate my presence. On my first official day as interim CEO, I didn't bring a business plan or a grand statement, just a blank notebook and a pen. I started by inviting each department head into the conference room. not to present quarterly targets, but to let them speak. No interruptions, no judgment, no labeling ideas as short-sighted or impractical like Nathan used to. After the meeting with the creative team, I stepped into the hallway and saw Jessica organizing a filing cabinet. She glanced at me, a bit hesitant. "Jessica," I said, "I'd like to officially appoint you as creative director." She blinked. "I thought it was just a temporary assignment." "Temporary is a word people use to downplay real value," I replied. "And I'm not repeating that mistake." Some in the company were surprised. A few whispered, "A young woman, less than a year in, given a major leadership role?" But I didn't choose based on tenure. I chose the person who stood beside me when everything collapsed, and Jessica was the first. Within a month, we overhauled the entire project approval process, streamlined, transparent, and no more senior men-only meetings. I also asked HR to schedule individual meet and greets with every employee, including interns. "I know many of you have worked in environments that lack transparency," I said during one team gathering. "I can't promise to fix everything overnight, but I can promise to listen and to act based on data, not ego." A week later, when David Harris returned to discuss a new contract, he shook my hand with both of his, eyes warmer than during our first meeting. "You've helped me believe in the idea of partnership again," he said, placing the contract on the table. "This time I want to sign with Eliana Mason, CEO, no one else." The contract with Harris Developments was not only renewed, but expanded to include 3 new branches: branding for affordable housing, a CSR media campaign, and a project to integrate AI with real estate user data. 3 weeks later, he referred us to 2 more partners, one of whom had worked with Mason and Vale, but had pulled out during Nathan's tenure. But no amount of success could patch the parts of me still in pieces. I used to think, I didn't need anyone. As long as I had a business plan and a quiet office, I could start over. But no one heals from a checklist. I began seeing a therapist, Carol, a soft-spoken woman who felt like she was helping me clean out a dusty attic in my mind. We talked about quiet power being stripped away, about being dismissed without evidence to fight back, about how to stop tying your self-worth to whether you're kept or discarded. I also returned to working out, not at the luxury gym Nathan once signed me up for, but at a small boxing studio on the east side of the city, the same one I went to back in college. Every punch into the heavy bag wasn't about Nathan, it was about me. About the Ileana who used to apologize when interrupted, who stifled sighs when dismissed, who shrugged it off when others took credit for her work like it was routine. I moved out of the old condo. My new place was a high-ceilinged loft near Zilker Park, flooded with morning light and cooled by soft evening breezes. I picked out every item myself: a forest green velvet armchair, a walnut dining table, and a plum-colored hand-woven rug. Nothing was ours. Everything was mine. I leaned against the window frame, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars, tea warming my hands. No one beside me, but I didn't feel empty. 6 months later, I was reviewing a customer expansion plan for the Western region when my assistant Ava tapped lightly on the door. "Eliana," she said softly, "someone's in the lobby asking for a work reference." I didn't look up. "Who?" She hesitated. "Nathan Mason." My pen paused. My finger slid slightly off the page, as if someone had cut the rhythm of a song mid-note. "Have him wait 5 minutes," I said calmly. "Then bring him in." When Nathan entered my office, he wore a light blue-gray suit that no longer fit like it used to. His face was thinner, his eyes shadowed. He didn't stand as steady as he once did, walking past me in these same halls. "Thank you for seeing me," he said, still standing near the door. "I won't take much of your time." I pointed to the chair across from me. "Sit." He sat and placed a thin folder on the table. "I'm applying for a local government media project," he began. "They're requesting confirmation of my past role, title, position, employment period." "Former company?" I repeated, lifting an eyebrow. "That sounds strange." Nathan avoided my gaze. "I know I have no right to ask for anything, but a neutral confirmation, just basic facts, could really help me get restarted." "You'll get it. Title? Co-founder. Position? Former CEO. Duration? From founding until suspension. I won't add or omit anything. He exhaled, relieved. Thank you, I didn't expect more. Without a word, I crossed the room and reached into the lowest drawer of the cabinet. Remember this? I asked, holding up a small metal plaque with silver trim. Reserved, Nathan Mason. He stared at it, silent. I found it in the receptionist's drawer the day your access badge was deactivated, I said slowly. I was going to throw it away, but then I thought, maybe it'd be better to frame it. I placed the framed nameplate on the shelf behind me, next to a photo of me and the new executive team signing our first contract with Harris Developments. Now it sits in my office. A reminder that I was once sidelined, and then stood back up on my own. Nathan stood. I know no apology is enough, he said, voice hoarse. But I truly regret it. Regret doesn't fix much, but time might. He paused, then turned and left without another word. A few minutes later, when Ava returned with the next report, I held up a hand. Wait, I said, turning to the window. Give me a few minutes. From the 23rd floor, the city unfolded beneath me. Lights blinking, streets alive. I watched it all in silence. Streets bustled below, glass buildings shimmered in the golden hour, and people kept moving, just like me. Despite every stumble. I was no longer the one being asked to leave the boardroom. I was the one sitting at the head of the table, the one holding the pen, the one rewriting the terms, the limits, the rules. Eliana's story isn't just about reclaiming a company, it's proof of what clarity, legal knowledge, and inner resolve can do. From being pushed out of the business she helped build, she rose back to reclaim control, dignity, and personal freedom. In life, pain is often inevitable, but how we rise after being pushed down is what defines us. Eliana didn't seek revenge through rage. She restored justice with wisdom and self-respect. What do you think about Eliana's journey? What would you do if you were in her place? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more moving, powerful family stories.